out. Everybody.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Lights Out. I'm your host, Josh.
And I'm your host, Austin.
And I'm the producer, Daniel.
And we're back today with probably one of the most depraved, darkest cases that we've ever covered. And that's saying a lot here on Lights Out. But this case is out of Oakland County, Michigan. Actually, pretty close to home for Austin.
Very close. It is home. That is the spot I grew up, Berkeley, Michigan, in Oakland County. And one of the cases that we'll be mentioning today, the kidnapping occurred only a few blocks from where I grew up, which is pretty odd and surreal when I think about it. But obviously a different time frame, because I grew up, this would have been 20 years before I was really around Berkeley. But I mean, even then and still now, it's regarded as just like an incredibly safe community. I loved growing up there. I had a lot of freedom there. I could walk down to the convenience store and not be scared of my neighbors. It's generally a very, very safe place, especially for kids. I mean, that was like, when I grew up there, it was kids central. All the boomers had moved to this like one neighborhood, and I mean, I'm not kidding you, when just up the block of my street, it was, 50 kids. It was just, we were everywhere. We were all running around, riding our bikes, playing street hockey, doing whatever. So it's so bizarre that in places that are so safe, statistically and, seemingly, that something so horrific can happen like this.
Yeah. I mean, how far is this from Detroit?
So yeah, that's a good question. Detroit, the border that's technically Wayne County, so
right,
just south. But Oakland County is just on the opposite side of 8 Mile. If you've seen the movie with Eminem, 8 Mile, that's where he grew up in Warren. But Oakland County is just north of that, immediately north of the border of Detroit.
How far, to drive from Oakland County down to downtown Detroit?
I mean, from where I grew up, you can cross the border in 15 minutes.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But if you're in Ferndale, Michigan, you cross in 2 minutes. I mean, or a second, because you might be close to 8 miles. So, I mean, it's buttressed right up against Oakland County. And that will come into play. A lot of Detroit, even the existence of Oakland County as it is today, a lot of it stems from Detroit's history. We'll talk about a little bit of white flight. Obviously, that plays a lot into why the suburbs grew and boomed and what they are today is because of the 67 riots. There's a vast amount of history here, and obviously, because I'm from here, I could run my mouth all day. But yeah, this was a surreal case to research and cover and go through.
It's one that I hadn't even heard of, which is surprising.
Yeah, same.
It is truly terrifying what was going on in the 70s in Oakland County. So there were 4 children that have been attributed to the Oakland County child murders, and they were Mark Stebbins, Jill Robinson, Kristine Mihelich, and Timothy King. And there may have been more. These 4 children were abducted and then subsequently murdered, and the killer or killers have never been brought to justice. There's been a lot of names floated out there, a lot of theories floated out there, including conspiracy theories of possible cover-up, which we'll get into. So you have this going on, but then on top of that, it turns out Michigan had its own Epstein Island situation going on.
I never had heard of this before in my life. And I love Michigan. I try and...
you're always hyping Michigan.
Yeah, I pride myself on knowing a lot about it. And I had never heard of North Fox Island before. And yeah, it was a punch to the gut to find out about this place.
So then there's that whole aspect of this case as well, and it seems that the two are likely linked in some way, and it's been, 40 years they've been trying to figure out what really happened and who was really involved, and they have a pretty good idea of some potential suspects, I think, that they feel pretty confident were involved, but at this point, many of them are dead, some of them are behind bars, and some are still free, and there's just... a serious lack of physical evidence and a lack of, it seems like investigational competence back in the 70s. Like they were not prepared for this type of serial crime spree that happened. And so things got fumbled and bumbled like nobody's business, and which is very, very sad and unfortunate because these poor parents of these kids have never gotten any answers, concrete answers, and also no one's been held accountable,
right?
Including the police for fumbling this case.
Nobody has even been arrested.
Yes,
in regards to this case, there have been other suspects who are arrested for other crimes, but no one has actually been arrested for the Oakland County child killer.
Yeah,
and on top of that, I mean, it's not for lack of resources in trying, because this was the largest task force ever assembled in U.S. history at this time. So
that's crazy
to think of it that way, and the fact that we didn't even have a single arrest at the end of it.
It really makes, like, you're going to be sitting after this really scratching your head of how did they not get somebody,
right?
And it's got a few rabbit holes to it that you can really go down, and you're like, whoa, there's potentially people in high places, and there's could have potentially been somebody with a badge involved. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. I mean, it's truly an insane case, and it's one that's hard to summarize in one episode.
Yeah, almost impossible, but we're going to try and do it here.
So let's, we've got a lot of ground to cover. So let's just go ahead and hop into things here, starting with giving you a little bit more background info on Oakland County. So as Austin was mentioning just earlier, it sits northwest of Detroit. It's also the wealthiest county in Michigan and the second most populous county in the state, which Wayne County is the most populous county, isn't it?
I believe so, yeah.
But after the white flight from Detroit, when many middle-class white families moved out of the city after the 1967 riots, many moved to places in Oakland County. And this turned the once rural areas into a sprawling suburbia, and it housed many who worked in the auto industry. Because that was a big...
Motor City.
Yep, Motor City, exactly. Out in these new developed suburbs in the 70s, many families often left their doors unlocked. I mean, I think all of, if you're our age and you have parents who were growing up in the 60s, 70s, they probably told you. We just left our doors unlocked.
Berkeley, Michigan, we actually
Did
left.
you even
yes,
in the 90s?
We left our doors unlocked. Eventually, when we got a little older, when I was maybe like 12, 13, my parents were like, okay, we should just start locking our doors. But we never needed to. We left them unlocked. Like in our day, we locked them at night, but during the day, we would just leave the back doors open and stuff, sometimes the front door.
Very little crime.
Yeah, very little.
They had also just let their kids wander freely. I mean, this was pretty common, I'd say, back in the 70s, especially, kids were wandering around Austin. I mean, even the 90s was wandering around in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
And so it just goes to show that there's a lot of, people felt safe in this community. This includes cities such as Birmingham, Royal Oak, Ferndale, and Berkeley. And despite this sense of safety in the communities, where homicides are extremely rare even to this day, in the 1970s, these areas would become tied to some of the most gruesome child abductions and murders in the nation. With all that being said, let's talk a little bit about Mark Stebbins, one of the victims of the Oakland County child killer. In 1976, 12-year-old Mark Stebbins, he was a 7th grade student at Lincoln Junior High School who lived with his family in Ferndale, Michigan, a city just north of the Detroit border. And we actually do have some really great clips that we were able to find online. But here's one of Mark's brother, Mike, describing what their neighborhood was like in Ferndale.
We grew up in Ferndale, a couple blocks south of 9 Mile. And, west or east of Woodward. It was a good neighborhood. And all the neighbors were good there.
He did mention Woodward. So this is a massive road that basically cuts from Detroit all the way up to Pontiac. It is a really, really, really long stretch of road. It's basically, if Woodward's shut down, no one's getting anywhere. I mean, there's a whole highway system built around the counties. But
most direct route?
Yeah, I mean, it is literally straight from the Detroit River almost all the way through Wayne County, all the way through Oakland County.
Wow.
It is a massive road. So with this street will actually become a big center point for this investigation, because they'll start to realize the connections that, I mean, not only does everyone just kind of take Woodward, but they started to piece together like how close a lot of the things that were occurring happened off of Woodward.
Interesting. But on February 15th, 1976, Mark and his brother were hanging out at the American Legion at Livernois and 9 Mile Road. There was a pool tournament that day, but eventually Mark wanted to head home and watch the movie 30 Seconds Over Tokyo. Mark loved toy soldiers and everything to do with the military, and he had dreams of one day joining the military himself. He called his mother at 1:30 p.m. to let her know that he was about to head home, and then he began walking home, but he never made it. His brother called mutual friends, but no one had seen him, and his mother reported him missing at 11 p.m. that night. According to Mark's brother, Mike, Ferndale police told the family that they wouldn't treat it as a missing persons case until it had been 24 hours. So this same old bullshit that they used to tell everybody to try to
lazy.
Yeah, just being lazy. Because assuming every kid that goes missing is just out with friends or, ran away for the night.
Right.
But again, this is a child who they're reporting missing.
And trust the family, right?
Yes.
If they have an inkling that, normally he isn't like this, then trust the family.
Mark Stebbins was missing for 4 days. And on February 19th, his body was found by a man going to a pharmacy at 11:45 a.m. At first, this man thought it was a mannequin before realizing it was a human boy. Mark's body was dumped in a parking lot near an office complex in a strip mall on 10 Mile and Greenfield in Southfield, and it's believed the body was dumped there sometime after 9 a.m. on the day it was discovered. He had been wearing the same clothes he was last seen in, and his clothes had no blood on them. Here's another clip of Mike describing what he thought after his brother's body was found.
Why would somebody take my brother off the street and do such brutal things and murder him? And I beat myself up for a long time, a lot of years. And it's like, I thought to myself, well, what if I would have walked home with him? Would he have made it? Or who knows, would they have tried to get both of us? I have no idea.
Authorities confirmed that he had been strangled with what seemed to be a rope and was assaulted with a foreign object. His official cause of death was asphyxia by way of smothering, and he had 2 lacerations to the left rear of his head. Rope marks were also found on both his wrists and ankles, which suggested that he had been tied up. There was also rope burns found around his neck. Unfortunately, L. Brooks Patterson, the Oakland County prosecutor at the time, said Mark's body was washed by an autopsy team. This had unfortunately washed away any potential fingerprints, which is a huge deal because at this time, that was one of the only ways they could possibly identify a suspect forensically.
Yep.
Was fingerprints.
Yeah, pre-DNA. Yeah.
Yeah, DNA was just letters to them back then.
Right.
And fingerprints was huge. So to just wash the body was a careless mistake made, one of many in this case. But here's just some news reporting featuring Mark Stebbins in an interview with his mother.
It all began on February 2nd, 1976. Everyone thought it was an isolated case, but the murder of Mark Stebbins of Ferndale remains unsolved. His body turned up 2 weeks after he disappeared in a parking lot in Southfield. The 12-year-old had left his mother and brother at a social function, never to be seen alive again.
Not a day goes by, where you don't wonder and, worry about it, the whys and the wherefores, how long he had been dead before his body was found, who it was, where he was, what he had to go through. And yes, I'm still very bitter.
As you can imagine, you're watching this on the news and you're a parent, especially in Oakland County at the time. Think about just how terrified you would be to hear of such a heinous murder, especially a murder of a child, and just the panic and the fear that it would cause throughout the community. And this was really just the beginning of this collective fear that would escalate by the end of 1976. These days, with technology at your fingertips and AI lurking on your phone, it's very easy to spiral down a rabbit hole when it comes to your health.
Always.
And so you start really getting worried. You start looking up all these things online. It's like, man, you're going to die.
It's always death.
It always leads to death. All roads lead to death.
Yeah.
And so, it's not a great place to be. But, since I got the ZocDoc app fired up, I can just go see whoever I need to see They make it extremely easy to find top-rated, high-quality, in-network doctors, and you can click instantly to book an appointment. Really, truly the best website, best app out there for booking a doctor's appointment.
Josh and I have used this website countless times at this rate. I always trust it. It's never done me dirty. It's been a benefit to my life. And as a person who is quite scared of going to the doctor sometimes, it's made it exceptionally easy.
ZocDoc makes it easy to find doctors because all you have to do is put in the condition, procedure, or type of doctor you're looking for, your location, and then your insurance carrier and plan, and hit search, and boom, you'll have all sorts of options along with available appointments and real patient reviews, so you can actually get some idea of who you're going to go see, and not just it's not this big mystery, where you're anxious. You're like, I don't know what this doctor's going to be like. Are they going to be nice? Are they going to scream at me?
I'm always afraid of that.
Are they going to shame me?
Why?
You don't want that.
Yeah.
You don't want that kind of experience. Appointments made through ZocDoc happen fast, typically within just 24 to 72 hours of booking. More often than not, you can even get same-day appointments. So it's just the easiest way to do it. We use it. You should use it. And everybody you know should use it. It is really an amazing service, and it's just so simple. So stop putting off those doctor's appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/lightsout to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today.
That's ZocDoc.com/lightsout. ZocDoc.com/lightsout. Because 12-year-old Jill Robinson from Royal Oak left her home on December 22nd, 1976. Her mother, Carol Robinson, was a single mom raising 3 children, and they originally lived in Detroit, but had recently moved to Royal Oak. Royal Oak's actually just right across Woodward from Berkeley, where I grew up, and I'm very familiar with it. I also went to school from preschool through graduation of my high school in Royal Oak, Michigan. Jill had gotten into an argument with her mother over making biscuits for dinner that evening. Carol ordered her out of the house after a heated argument, saying that she would go out to the front yard and come back inside when she wanted to be a part of the family. Jill then got dressed, packed her backpack with a blanket, got on her bike, and left the house. Her sister asked her where she was going, and Jill said, "None of your business," classic sister style, and this was the last time she was ever seen alive. Many believe she possibly headed to her father's home, which was about 6 miles away in Birmingham, but she never arrived. Jill's father, Thomas Robinson, then called police at 11:30 p.m. to report her missing. Here is an interview with Carol Robinson on Christmas Day. This was about 3 days after her daughter had gone missing.
I haven't seen her since, and I wasn't really very worried for an hour or so because she's very stubborn, and I thought she'll stand in the next yard and think about it or go around the block or something, and then I thought maybe she went to visit her father.
Unfortunately, Jill's body was discovered the day after Christmas along I-75 north of Big Beaver Road in Troy, Michigan, not far from the Troy police station. Her body was in plain sight of anyone passing by. I-75, if you don't know, that is a massive interstate that basically connects Michigan. It runs through almost the entire country, I believe. It runs from Michigan all the way down to Florida. Everybody at any time of day is on I-75 too. It is a incredibly busy interstate, and to know that people are passing by like this. But she had been shot in the head with a 12-gauge shotgun in the position where she was found, meaning right along I-75. And what's odd is that Jill had previously visited a therapist for her fears of being shot in the face by an unknown man. Quite an odd coincidence. And her mother later released a recording over a radio program of Jill telling her therapist about her fears, which is
it's
bizarre.
Wild. It's like she had a premonition or something.
Right.
Yeah.
She was found wearing the same backpack and clothes that she had left home with, and her body did not show signs of sexual abuse. Her bicycle was spotted behind a local hobby store, although it's unclear if she biked there and left it or if the killer dropped it off later. But here's a news report of Jill Robinson.
From Royal Oak, Jill Robinson, 12 years old, was missing. She ran away after a fight with her mother. No one knows anything about the person she met on that adventure, only that person is a killer. In 4 days, it was the day after Christmas. Her body turned up in Troy. She was dead of a shotgun blast to the head. County Prosecutor Brooks Patterson told me the investigation would not soon end.
Still remain anonymous. But the investigation is proceeding, but I can't say that a suspect has surfaced nor that an arrest is imminent. I don't think the public expects these things to be broken in 48 hours.
L. Brooks Patterson, he'll come up a few times in this case. He's a pretty controversial character, actually, back home. For more than one reason, it's hard to get into, but we'll see. His tactics during these investigations were heavily scrutinized, especially in hindsight. But either way, police struggled to find a suspect for both murder cases. Captain Robert Robertson of the Michigan State Police later admitted that the Stebbins and Robinson cases were not initially connected at this time. The only credible lead investigators had was an eyewitness who had seen a Pontiac Le Mans on the side of the road around the time of the murder, close to where the body was found. That's a great lead, you would think. Many believe that it would be incredibly difficult or near impossible for a single suspect to keep these children captive for as long as they did without accomplices or eyewitnesses, but still police struggled to find any leads.
And I think there's just lack of experience, especially early on, to try to figure out which way to go. They're like, could one person do that? Could multiple people have been involved? And their heads are just kind of spinning at this point.
Right.
Because only a few days later, 10-year-old Kristine Marie Mihelich was reported missing on January 2nd, 1977. Kristine was a 5th grade student at Patton Gill Elementary School, and she had left her home at 3 p.m. to go to a 7-Eleven store on 12 Mile Road in Oakshire in Berkeley, only a few blocks from her home.
So Patton Gill's still there. That's right by my house where I grew up. And then that 7-Eleven is also still there.
Wow.
I've been to that a handful of times. We wouldn't go to the 7-Eleven. There's actually another convenience store just up that road, but I would walk there all the time with my friends down there, and it was always incredibly safe.
God. Well, the clerk remembered a young girl inside the store who purchased a teen movie magazine, but this young girl never returned home, and her mother reported her missing at 6 p.m. By noon the next day, all police departments in the area were alerted, and they were given photographs of Kristine to distribute. And over the next 2 weeks, police followed up as many tips as possible from the public, but came up with nothing. A USPS mail carrier found Kristine's body 19 days later on the side of a rural road in Franklin Village, about 8 miles west of Berkeley. There were no apparent signs of violence, and she was in the same clothes she was last seen in. Her body was found on its back with the knees drawn up. Her mother later said she believed her daughter was kept for so long because she was such a sweet girl to be around. She also said, quote, "What would you think when you go to bed at night? Your daughter was with someone for 19 days. You had that thought in your head 24 hours, 7 days, 365. It doesn't leave." I can't even imagine how agonizing that would be. But Kristine's body was found half frozen, and police determined she had been there less than 24 hours. She was lying in the snow for a while. Her body was so frozen that they had to wait until the next day to perform the autopsy, which concluded that she had been smothered to death, just like Mark Stebbins, and she had a faint bruise under her left cheek, which suggested that the killer could have used his forefinger and thumb to close her nose, and the bruising resulted from his middle finger pressing against her cheek. Similar to Jill, Kristine did not show signs of abuse. A hair that did not belong to her was also found on her blouse. But here's some news reporting on Kristine Mihelich.
Residents' worst thoughts seemed to be coming true when 10-year-old Kristine Mihelich never came home from a 3-block trip to a party store in Berkeley. Within 2 weeks, she too was found dead, this time in Franklin Village. Local police departments, state police, and the county began one of the most intensive searches in Michigan's history. And so with this scene now all too vivid in our minds, the search continued.
After the discovery of Kristine's body, authorities connected her death to Mark Stebbins and Jill Robinson's cases. Authorities notified the public that a serial killer was possibly operating in and around Oakland County. Newspapers across the state ran the story, of course, and local authorities also began forming a task force because they know as soon as serial killer gets out there in the public, people are going to start really freaking out, and they've got to be there to combat that and also have a game plan of how they're going to catch this alleged serial killer. Which then leads us to the next abduction. Timothy John King.
11-year-old Timothy John King, who went by Timmy or Tim, often by his friends or family, disappeared on the evening of March 16th, 1977. He had left his family home in Birmingham with a skateboard to head to a nearby pharmacy, and his parents were out to dinner with a client, and his sister Kathy was heading out to see Jerry Lewis live. She had given him 30 cents to go to the corner pharmacy called Hunter Maple and get some candy. 2 of his other siblings were at home that night. A clerk at that pharmacy later said that she sold Timothy candy at 8:30 p.m. that night, and he left through the back door into the parking lot. When he didn't return home that night by 9 p.m., his family reported him missing. A massive search across the Detroit metro area followed. His family searched everywhere for him, and by 9:15 the next morning, police called on a task force to help the investigation. Timothy had been the 7th child to go missing in that area around this time. That morning, the task force headquarters were established just a few blocks from his home, and police conducted door-to-door searches and interviewed his classmates. Tim's father, Barry King, who will be a massive voice in this investigation, he said, quote, "We love him very much. He had a basketball game Saturday and missed practice Thursday. He's active in a school play. He's an achiever and a participator. We just love Tim, and we want him to come home." The King family went public, and especially Barry, and he pleaded for the abductor to release Timothy. Here's some of that footage.
Well, I want to say hi to Tim. We love you, Tim. God bless you. Stay tough. I have one other statement to those persons or person who may be with Tim. I don't know if you have children or if you want to have some, but please treat Tim the same way you would your own kid. Talk to him. He's a talkative kid if you spend some time with him.
That's just so heartbreaking to listen to, man.
Yeah.
Because it's just like he knows, especially with everything else going on, that the likeliness that Tim is going to come home is dimming for sure.
Yeah. But as I said earlier, Barry King, he would later become a very strong voice for his family and all the victims in the Oakland County child killer case. And he and his family would spend years investigating the case themselves. And we'll get back to that a bit later. But Timothy's body was discovered after 6 days on the evening of March 22nd. His body was spotted in a shallow ditch alongside Gill Road near 8 Mile and Livonia, close to a very busy intersection. He was wearing the same clothes he had worn when he left his home that night. His skateboard was found about 15 feet away from his body. And here's the initial news report of what happened to Timothy King.
And while the search for the child killer continued, it happened again. The victim this time, Timothy King, age 11 of Birmingham, last seen at a party store 3 blocks from home, found a few weeks later on a dark roadside in Livonia.
Livonia police kept a mile-long stretch of Gill Road blocked and allowed only a select group of investigators near the body. Though no official statements were being made, the red jacket Timothy King was wearing when he disappeared could be seen from the roadblock. The police began checking license plates and cars going both directions on a mile-long stretch of 8 Mile Road in hopes that a suspect would return to the scene. As part of the routine, Oakland County deputies stopped and searched several people but turned up nothing.
Do you have any reason to believe that the suspect might still be in the area?
Nothing specific, no. But this type of crime, very often the responsible will return just to see what's going on.
I still feel the most important aspect is the investigation and get this animal off the street.
Timothy's autopsy showed he had been assaulted and strangled to death. He had been cleaned and groomed thoroughly before he was suffocated. The autopsy also revealed that he had eaten Kentucky Fried Chicken, which was his favorite food, just before his death. Here is Barry King, his father, talking about the case in recent years.
I'm convinced to this day that when Timmy was kidnapped, he knew what was going to happen to him. And as an 11-year-old kid, there was nothing he could do about it. I can't imagine anybody doing what they're doing. And I can't imagine people not turning people in to do that. But I can't change society.
Barry and his wife, Marion, established the Tim King Fund in 1977 which supported abused children and promoted youth activities in Birmingham.
This episode of Lights Out is brought to you by one of our favorite sponsors, Wild Grain.
So good. This is top dog here.
I love Wild Grain. I can't say enough good things about it. Everything that I've tried from them has exceeded my expectations, has been better than anything I've bought at my local grocery store or bakery. And it's amazing that it comes frozen. It blows my mind. I'm like, how is this frozen? Yet when I heat it up, it tastes like it was just baked in my kitchen.
I want to figure it out. There's probably some answers in how they actually bake this stuff, but I almost like the illusion of the magic that they bring to the table.
It's a magical experience.
It really is.
These guys are serving up some of the best baked goods, artisanal breads, seasonal pastries, and fresh pastas you've ever had. All items conveniently bake in 25 minutes or less. And unlike store-bought, Wild Grain uses a slow fermentation process that's easier on your belly. And it's made with simple ingredients that you can pronounce, and it's richer in nutrients and antioxidants. And their selection is absolutely amazing. They've got everything from hot dog buns to cheesecake. They've got rhubarb turnovers, raspberry lemon biscuits. They've got cinnamon sugar donuts, chocolate lava cakes, breads, and they've got all the pastas, of course, linguine. And they have some fancier ones too. They've got some potato gnocchi. They've got tortellini, all fresh, by the way, all fresh. And they have the best giant chocolate chip chunk cookies you will ever have. I love them so much.
Yeah, Josh and I think that we agree that's our favorite thing.
Yeah, so you go on there and you customize your box based on 4 items, 6 items, or 12 items, and then you can choose a variety box. They have plant-based and gluten-free as well. And when you sign up, you get free croissants for life. We have a special link for you.
You know what's wild about Wild Grain, Josh?
Why is it so wild?
It's that things like this, you go look at the picture of their croissants. You actually go and bake those bad boys up. It looks like how the pictures look. And it tastes like the pictures
better.
too.
We love it. We know you will too. This fall, treat yourself and your loved ones to warm sourdough breads and seasonal baked goods from Wild Grain. Rumor has it, they have apple cider donuts and pumpkin cinnamon biscuits. I'm going to literally go order some after this because I love those apple cider donuts. Are so good.
I got to get me some.
For a limited time, Wild Grain is offering our listeners $30 off the first box plus free croissants in every box after that when you go to wildgrain.com/lightsout to start your subscription.
That's right. You heard them. Free croissants in every box and $30 off your first box when you go to wildgrain.com/lightsout. That's wildgrain.com/lightsout, or you can just use the promo code lightsout at checkout. Do not miss their seasonal products this time around.
Go get them now. I really have a lot of respect for Barry and their whole family, really.
They put a lot of effort into
Oh my
this
God,
case.
yes. Years and years and years, I think.
Up until their death, too. They really did it all.
I mean, how can you ever give up on your child, right?
Right.
And just, the amount of bullshit they had to deal with just the authorities and all the politics that are involved in this case, as we'll get into here in a minute. Was just insane to get no answers, to see no one arrested, no one held accountable, and knowing that there's somebody covering for somebody else. Somebody's not providing the information that the authorities need. But these child murders have never been solved, and the case was actually given the nickname OCCK for short, and more children have been suspected of being victims and even tied back to this case. The original task force identified several more possible victims, although only the 4 were really ultimately confirmed to be connected to each other. But this list includes 17-year-old Donna Sarah. She went missing on September 29th, 1972. She hitchhiked to a beach after school in Macomb County, Michigan, and was later found in a shallow creek almost a month later. She was held captive, drugged, and killed by strangulation. 16-year-old Cynthia Ray Cadieux went missing on January 15, 1976, and her nude body was found in Bloomfield Township the next morning. Her skull was crushed and she had been assaulted by more than one person. Her case was later solved in 1979 and was ultimately not an OCK or OCCK murder. Her perpetrators, Robert Englund and Raymond Heinrich, were both convicted of her murder. A third unnamed individual was involved but died before their arrest. 14-year-old Sheila Schrock was and shot in the head while babysitting in Birmingham on January 20th, 1976. Her case was also later disproved to be connected to the Auk case. Luckily, a neighbor had seen her killer, Oliver Rhodes Andrew, on the night of, and he was later sentenced to life in prison. 13-year-old Jane Louise Allen disappeared on August 8th, 1976, and she was last seen hitchhiking from Pontiac to Royal Oak in Oakland County, where she lived. Her body was found 3 days later in a river in Miamisburg, Ohio, some 200 miles away from her home. Her arms had been bound behind her back, and she died from suspected carbon monoxide poisoning. Then there's 12-year-old Kimberly Alice King, who disappeared on September 15, 1979. She was staying at a friend's house in Warren to spend the night, and she had snuck out to call her sister from a payphone at 11 p.m., which is only a short walk away from the house. Her sister told her to go back to the friend's house, but she never returned, and her body has never been found. Authorities theorize that she may have been a victim in the Auk case.
It's important to, remember these other victims too, and it also might give perspective to the panic that was going on at this time, right?
A lot of children disappearing.
Yeah, and even though, it's the 4 are confirmed connected to this case, still to think, it's kind of mind-boggling to understand that it is way more children that are also going missing at this time. God, it's just like insult to injury. And even thinking that, okay, there is this case and they've kind of honed or connected these. There's these other ones out here, some of which have been solved, but some haven't.
Yeah. And the fact that they don't seem to be even any closer to understanding what really happened with those as well.
Yeah.
Is just chilling, honestly. Like, just all this is going on. It seems like nobody knows what the hell is going on or how to tie these things together, truly, and look at the bigger picture that's going on here.
But after Timothy King's body was discovered, authorities knew for certain they had a serial killer or killers on the loose. The potential killer was given the nickname the babysitter since they groomed, bathed, and fed the victims before killing them. All of the victims were abducted within, like I was saying, this is within a mile of Woodward Avenue. That's the major road that begins in Detroit and extends through Oakland County. The abduction area is specifically between Ferndale and Birmingham, and I'm not joking when I say this is the area I grew up. Ferndale and Birmingham and everything in between, all along Woodward. These were the places I was hanging out when I was a kid. So it's like,
that's really wild to think.
Yeah, it was not to make this about me, but it was just very surreal to go through this case and be like, wow, this all happened right where I was hanging out when I was a child.
Which, when you think about it, Woodward Avenue, this is a busy street that you can get quite a bit of distance on, right? You could be in like one part of Oakland County and the next moment be on the other side of Wayne County.
Yeah, in a totally different city.
In a matter of, minutes, right?
Yep. Yeah. And I mean, this is a huge road. If you look at it in some sections, like close to where I live, it was 4 lanes on either side with a medium in between. So if that kind of gives you the idea, the amount of people that were really traveling along this road, it's everybody who lives in the area. But police suspected the killer or killers were possibly a teacher, police officer, or firefighter, someone that the children would trust. It's also possible that the killer used another child to lure the victims. Police had discovered synthetic carpet fibers on all 4 children's bodies, dog hairs on both boys, and human hairs on Kristine, Mark, and Timothy. One of the hairs found on Timothy was inside his underwear, suggesting it specifically belonged to his attacker. The hair found on Timothy and Mark were confirmed to be mitochondrial DNA match, and we'll get into that a bit later, what that means and the exact connections that they made to this hair. But the carpet fibers found were the same gold color, which made a lot of people believe that they were coming from the same house, possibly. But even in recent years, investigators could not confirm they were from the same carpet. Either way, the largest homicide task force in U.S. history at the time was formed. The OCCK, or Auk case, also operated alongside the Jimmy Hoffa case. And if you know anything about this case, I mean, The Irishman, the Scorsese movie that came out a few years ago, massive movie, covers Jimmy Hoffa. That is a household name known in every single Michigan house. It is also continuously joked about because this man was never found, Jimmy Hoffa. He was a famous American labor union leader who disappeared mysteriously in 1975, and he disappeared from a restaurant parking lot in one of Oakland County's most affluent towns, which is Bloomfield Hills. And many suspect the disappearance involved organized crime. I mean, he was never found. I even actually knew a guy who worked on the Jimmy Hoffa case. He was a friend through scouting. His dad worked on the Jimmy Hoffa case. Went on for years. They never figured out what happens. There are a lot of pretty concrete theories out there, but still it's a big mystery. I mean, and I said they joke about it earlier because people in Michigan, it's so ubiquitous, this case, that you go see something odd in Michigan, like, oh, why is that like cement paved in that way? You just joke, that's where Jimmy Hoffa's buried. That's like how huge this case was. Everybody knows it. But
there are a lot of like conspiracy theories around it too.
Oh yeah, big time. I mean, they're pretty certain that it was organized crime because of his connections, and they still really don't know, but all the roads really led to dead ends. I mean, the guy that I knew, I think the last they were looking, this was like circa like 2006 or something. They were still looking for him, and they thought he was maybe underneath some driveway in this like suburban house. But yeah, they've never found him. But I mean, it's so big of a case. Bunch of wild goose chases over the decades, and unfortunately, many resources, including federal resources, were used and exhausted in this case. And you know, like I said, his case has never been solved. His body's never been found. Some actually suggest, you know, in hindsight, the resources that were allocated towards the Jimmy Hoffa investigation might have been better spent on this case.
All these missing kids.
Yeah. Instead, I mean, it's important to remember this still is the biggest task force at the time was working on the OCCK case, but you can imagine, especially federal resources might have been best spent instead of searching for Jimmy Hoffa, maybe trying to figure out what happened to these kids. And I'm kind of that opinion as well.
Yeah. I mean, and that's where politics comes into play.
Oh, for sure.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, he was a huge labor union leader. He was in the newspapers. I mean, this was like a local celebrity. That's how big he was.
Right. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. But after Timothy had gone missing, one of the thousands of tips that came flooding in was from an eyewitness who told authorities that she had seen a boy with a skateboard who looked like Timothy. He was in the parking lot of the pharmacy that he had gone to on March 16th, and this eyewitness saw him talking to a man who drove an AMC Gremlin, which is a little car. And look at this thing.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool car.
Look at the front. The front's like bigger than the second half of it.
Half the car, yeah.
Yeah. This man was described as a white male in his 30s with dark shaggy hair and long sideburns. Composite sketches were created and distributed by the thousands. And with so little info to go on, authorities ended up stopping and questioning literally every driver or any driver of an AMC Gremlin seen on the roads in Oakland County.
We're not exaggerating this. Yeah. That was what was going on.
Because typically you need probable cause to stop a vehicle, right?
And this is where I was saying L. Brooks Patterson becomes very controversial.
Yes. So not only to stop one, but to then search it is like a whole other thing. So L. Brooks Patterson, the Oakland County prosecutor at the time, said that he would take the heat for any Fourth Amendment violations that came out of this, which...
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, that's nuts. You don't hear about this very often.
No.
So he effectively put a hold on the Fourth Amendment in the entire county. So if you drove an AMC Gremlin...
You were getting pulled over.
You're getting pulled over, frisked, like... interrogated on the side of the road, basically.
Yeah. And a lot of people kind of accepted it. They're like, oh, yeah, you're looking for the guy. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm fine. That's fine. Which is so wild.
But people are literally like, you know, sitting at the breakfast table. They see one drive down the street. It's their neighbor 3 houses down. They're like calling the cops on him.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then neighbors getting pulled over on the way out of the neighborhood. Like, oh, what the hell?
Yep.
But they were pretty desperate. And this seemed like a very credible lead at the time. And moves like this made Patterson pretty controversial, but he'd go on to be elected as the county executive of Oakland County in 1992, and then went on to serve 6 terms. So
yeah, I think really at the end of the day, when you look at it, he made, what is it called? He's certified like the county as a AAA. So financially, he was very beneficial for Oakland County. But things like this kind of make you question his ethics.
Right. Yeah, nearly 3,000 gremlins were tracked during the original task force, and reportedly one gremlin had been stopped over 20 times. That's wild, dude.
Can you imagine?
Oh my God. And in the end, the search into the blue AMC Gremlins came up with nothing. Literally nothing. Critics called this a complete waste of time and resources and a violation of constitutional rights.
Yep.
And this also sidetracked the investigation. And people to this day are still convinced the perpetrator drove a blue AMC Gremlin based on that one eyewitness testimony.
Yeah, isn't that insane?
That's
what a
nuts.
Waste. Complete waste.
The King family also heavily criticized the AMC Gremlin lead, and this went on to be considered the biggest sensational lead and the biggest red herring in the entire case. So just the amount of time and resources and constitutional rights that were violated for something that was never even legitimate.
Yeah.
Investigators later believed that the real suspect vehicle was possibly a Pontiac Le Mans or Tempest. It's unlikely that a Gremlin was ever involved at all.
Yep.
Because it's like, people screw up cars and makes and models all the time.
Oh, yeah. Eyewitness testimony. I mean, I have said this time and again on this podcast, I know, but it's instances like this that make me realize what is so frustrating about eyewitness reports. I mean, you want to believe them. Of course, you want to exhaust everything you can for someone who potentially saw the victim on the day or the night that they disappeared. Of course, like I can get where that sentiment is coming from, and hindsight is always 20/20, but wow, was that worth it to take that eyewitness report this far?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
To not have a shred of evidence to back up this eyewitness.
Right.
Especially when it comes to the make and model of a vehicle. Like, I could even understand a blue vehicle, because obviously at that point, that's a lot more than just one specific vehicle.
Right.
But for this person to be like, no, it was a Gremlin. And they're like, all right, got it. We're going to go stop every Gremlin.
Single one. And then it makes you doubt the sketches that they did of the,
right,
because it was the same eyewitness. So it's like, where are those even legitimate? It's hard to even, follow this.
Which is why you don't really see that happen as much these days.
Right. Yeah.
They're not doing that for multitude of reasons, but
right. And there's a bit more evidence to the Pontiac Le Mans, because not only was one seen by an eyewitness, that was for the Jill Robinson case, that was on I-75 parked along the road where a lot of eyewitnesses could spot it.
Right.
But additionally, that one, I believe it was the Timothy King case where one of the inspectors actually measured the bumper that had impacted the snowbank, and they deduced that it would have matched like a Le Mans or one of the other Pontiacs.
Right. Yeah.
So we actually had way more evidence for those vehicles, yet we exhausted everything on the Gremlin.
Could have had a lot of lawsuits on their hands,
right.
Especially the guy that got stopped 20 times.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Jesus. Yeah. It's just an example of the type of investigation that was going on here.
Yeah.
They had little to go off of. And so they did what they thought they had to do at the time.
And they quadrupled down on it too.
Mm-hmm.
But moving on from the AMC Gremlin, in 1977, a person claiming to be the roommate of the Oakland County child killer wrote a typewritten letter to a Detroit psychiatrist, Dr. Bruce Danto. Dr. Danto then shared the letter with the police. I'm not sure how much water this actually holds, but, it feels like we should kind of pull out all the stops for this case. Across the bottom of the envelope that the letter came in, it said, quote, this is in all caps, most very important, most urgent, please. The letter had countless spelling and grammatical errors. The author identified himself as Alan and the killer as Frank. He claimed he met Frank in Vietnam and the war had turned Frank into a monster. He wrote, quote, he killed a lot of little kids, then with medals for it, burned them to death, bombed them with napalm. He wants the rich people like people in Birmingham to suffer like all of us suffered to get nothing back for what we did for our country. He's not a monster like you think. He really loves children, especially that little girl for 3 weeks. Not doing it because hates children, but doing it because hates everybody else out there. Allen claimed he was not with Frank during the abductions or murders. Part of the letter said, "I am desperate," desperate spelled wrong, "and nearly gone crazy and haven't got no place left to turn. Please don't give up the killer to the police. You must help me, as there is no one else I can turn to. This is for real. I know who the killer is. I live with him. I am his slave." Allen claimed he had stayed with Frank and the children in a Detroit apartment, and Frank would leave the children gagged while he went to work. In the letter, Allen asked Dr. Danto to contact him through the newspapers using the code words, "trees to bloom in 3 weeks." Dr. Danto received a phone call from Allen on April 10th, 1977, and they agreed to meet the following night at a bar. Dr. Danto later told the press, "The man sounded very frightened, not cool and composed. I don't think it was a hoax call." Allen said he would bring Polaroid pictures that proved Frank killed the 4 children, but he would only agree if Dr. Danto brought a letter of immunity from then-Governor William Milliken. Dr. Danto went to the bar at the agreed-upon time, but Allen never arrived. The letter is still a bit of a mystery to this day. I don't know what to think of that one.
Yeah, you can take that a lot of different ways. I mean, it could have some credibility to it, but my guess is probably not.
That's what
I mean, if this was really an attempt, especially to get, sounds like they're trying to get some immunity, and this was all legitimate, why would you not go through with it?
Right. And yeah, it definitely sounds like if this is true, they're probably complicit.
Yeah, I don't know. It's very strange though. In the way that it's phrased is sort of, well, he did it because he's trying to get back at all the wealthy people.
Yeah.
Birmingham,
communities. There are a lot of wealthy people in Birmingham. That is like a really, really nice city. But is that motive for something like this, you think? I mean, maybe even a deranged person.
Like, I'm going to go hurt these families by killing their children.
Yeah. But I mean, if you go back, like Ferndale during this time was not, there's a pretty stark difference even today between Ferndale and Birmingham. I mean, Ferndale is a lot nicer than it used to be, but back then in the 70s, like that was a pretty, middle class, lower middle class area to live. So that motive doesn't make sense for these other areas.
It could just be somebody trying to get involved, or to stir the pot. I mean, this does happen in these, especially these types of cases. People just insert themselves into it and then just disappear. Yeah, who really knows? Now let's talk about North Fox Island, because this part just completely blew my mind. But the Ock Task Force cost $1 million, and it was led by Assistant District Commander Robert Robertson, and they followed up on 18,000 tips. So it's just crazy.
Holy hell.
In about a year, they cleared 7,400 suspects. 79 were cleared through polygraph tests. They also screened about 10,000 known sexual deviants. Although the investigation absolutely did not lead them to a conviction for the Ock case, it did unravel dark and disturbing networks that existed close to home. Like, what is this interest with the children? Why are the children being targeted?
Right.
That, they're trying to figure that out. Obviously, there is child sexual predators afoot here, so they're trying to get a handle on it. But on March 29th, 1977, 3 Michigan State Police detectives flew to Joliet, Illinois. And they went there to question an unnamed man incarcerated for distributing child abuse material. Investigators followed the theory that the victims in the Ock case might have been trafficked and used to create child abuse materials. And unfortunately, investigators didn't learn much from the man. But he said this: he is going to keep it up. Just why in the hell does he do it all in one locality except he is screaming for you to catch him? Pretty damning statement there. Although they never caught the killer, investigators followed a trail that led them to the discovery of a large child abuse material and a ring operating in several states. It was based on North Fox Island in Lake Michigan. About 24 people were arrested by the end of the investigation. But North Fox Island, I mean, there's a lot of islands, right? Out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
which is something I never really realized.
Oh, yeah.
That there was like dozens of little islands out there.
The Great Lakes are massive. I mean, when you go and look at one, if you just go to the shore and look out, you're like, this could be the ocean for as far as I know. This is crazy. Yeah, it's massive, and many, many, many islands out there, especially in this clump. Like, it's kind of where between the UP and the lower peninsula. Sorry, we call it the UP, Upper Peninsula, Lower Peninsula. A lot out there. It's also very desolate in certain areas as well, which I mean would attract something like this if you're trying to keep something secret. A lot of cheap land too in certain
So you can
areas.
purchase property out there?
Yeah.
And live off grid
in the middle of nowhere. Yeah. Some people, I mean, there are just like tracts of forest that don't have any plumbing, electricity, anything that you could just kind of buy chunks of land.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that leads us to a millionaire named Francis D. Sheldon from Grosse Pointe, and he had bought North Fox Island for $20,000 in 1959 and built an airfield, docks, and small cabins for a children's summer camp. It was called Brother Paul's Children's Mission.
And if you think that sounds religious, it's because it was, and it was even connected to the church.
Yep. He also had a private jet, which he used to fly children and predators from Charlevoix and other Michigan cities to the island where he had a filming operation going on. He used the island to create child sex abuse material, traffic children, and invite pedophiles to the island to abuse children. Victims claim that the perpetrators were men in power and even men in government. The camp operated for 2 summers in 1975 and 1976 and actually received federal and state funding, believe it or not.
Come on.
So sick. The victims of North Fox Island were around the same age as Mark and Timothy from the Auk case. A teacher and married man from Port Huron, Gerald Richards, who went by Jerry, helped recruit young boys to go to the island on quote-unquote field trips. He also performed magic for children and was an amateur photographer. Another victim, Michael Farquhar, opened up in the documentary called Children of the Snow, which I do recommend watching after listening to this episode, but he said that Jerry Richard had lured him into a world of child abuse material and abuse, and he was only 12 years old at the time when he met Jerry. And at first, Jerry seemed like an adult who truly cared about Michael's best interests. He got Michael set up with activities in the YMCA, and Michael also assisted in Jerry's magic shows. But Jerry eventually manipulated Michael into creating child abuse material. And eventually Jerry was selling Michael to elite. But here's some local WDIV interviews with 2 men, Bill Johnson and Mike Dunsmore, who went to North Fox Island when they were young.
Right to the beach. You know, just leave your clothes and, you know, you can bring a towel, put it in the beach, but the other boys had to be naked, and that's just how it was.
So once again, they played on our trust.
But there's times we could just go, you know, be boys. You know, but they focused on me a lot, I noticed. Long blonde hair, blue-eyed, 11-year-old. You know, the very first day we were there and I had a sunburn and Jerry Richards rubbed lotion on me everywhere. I remember him taking lotion and putting it on his hand here and then just me laying on my stomach and just going between my cheeks. You know, with his hand like that. And I felt very uncomfortable, but he assured me everything was okay, and this is what we're supposed to do. Again, I trusted him. You know, turn over, do the same thing, because you have to protect that. You know, so every day he did that to me. Sheldon, he said the same thing too. This is how things are. You know, this is my island, I own this island, blah, 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 and you kids are lucky and fortunate to be here. You know, so basically just adhere to these rules. And this is how we are here. You know, and they were naked as well.
There was a stump, and it was probably about the size around as this chair, maybe 4 or 5 feet long. And I remember there was snakes on the end of it. So I rolled the thing, I rolled it with the bottom ripped off of it, and there was literally thousands of snakes in this thing. I go back and I get Bill, and I said, you got to see these snakes. He said, I don't really care for snakes. I said, well, come on, you got to see this. This is really, I wanted to show somebody.
There's cameras by the trail that we took. Mike and I would go, you know, catch snakes and salamanders and just do what boys do. And there's cameras, you know, a lot, all over the place, really.
Well, when we got back, we couldn't find anybody. You know, usually there was somebody right around the main cabin, and there was nobody there. I want to say it was probably a couple hours. Then they came back, and they were happy, but the 2 boys were different after they were quiet.
I don't know if it's the exact same time, but I remember hearing one of the kids screaming and crying, like somebody was hurting him, and he was screaming and yelling, stop. And we didn't know what was going on, and we knew it was coming from a locked door. There's nothing we could do except for take off running. which is what we did. Now, I don't know if it's that same time, and I remember the tree trunk full of snakes because that was cool. Wow, we're 11, but we heard the kid crying. I think it was a kid that was a grade above us. Heard him screaming and crying. Stop. Yeah, I remember that very vividly. I don't think he really talked much. He didn't talk a lot before, but he didn't talk really at all after that.
They didn't talk anymore.
I think Mike was the lucky one. Just his natural curiosity to run and be a boy and look around, kept him safe, and I'm glad for him. I wasn't as fortunate.
It's like it didn't sink in as, wow, these kids went through an awful hell, and until I started getting older, and I was thinking, wow, they used our innocence, and that sucks.
He asked if I could put some lotion on him, and I was very hesitant, and I knew that I shouldn't do that. He said, well, I did you, and you should do that for me, that kind of thing. So I did. I knew it was wrong. It's hard to describe. I felt shameful. I knew it was wrong, something I shouldn't have done. Man, I'm thinking in my 11-year-old mind, I never had nothing to say at confession because we used to go to confession once a week. And I never had anything to say at confession because I never did anything wrong. This is definitely wrong, so I'm definitely going to have to tell the priest this. So I felt bad. Should I say it? And they got you thinking, you have to confess, your sins in order to be forgiven. This is how we were taught. So I think my biggest worry was if I should tell the priest, or should I tell my mom? I should keep it to myself. They said, I'm going to get in trouble, but am I getting in trouble if I tell it to the priest? So a lot of mixed emotions. It was a really messed up time, I guess. Yeah. I went back in my 20s to look for him. I was telling my wife this story, and she said, did you ever find him? And I said, I'm telling you the story. No, I didn't, because I would have killed him. So then I went looking for his grave. Never could find that either. So just kind of been buried for a long time.
In 1976, arrest warrants were issued after long delays, but Francis Sheldon, the owner of the island, he's wealthy and he's well connected. He actually fled to the Netherlands and was never prosecuted, which I was so pissed when I found that out. I was like, of course he did.
Of course.
He got out of there. He got tipped off what was going down.
Yep.
And he got the hell out of
Possibly had connections too.
Right.
Yeah.
Totally. And supposedly he was reported dead in 1996. I hope it was a rough way to go for him. But hundreds of thousands of photos of children were recovered from Francis Sheldon's distributor in Amsterdam. So this was like a national/international ring going on.
Yeah.
This material was going all over the world.
Yeah.
The task force later reviewed all the images and did not find any of the children who were named in the Auk case.
Also, God bless the people that have to review that type
seriously.
of shit. So crazy and horrific.
Yeah, actually, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, they have a whole department. I've actually got to see where they do this.
Yeah.
And I didn't get to talk to actually one of the people on that team, but I talked to the CEO about the people who work on that team, and they have to work they work in this locked off, very secure room. But these people literally all day review this material online that's submitted to them to try to hopefully identify people and also get the images over to law enforcement. But
Jesus,
I couldn't even imagine. That's just
that is like
the worst.
Yeah, and that's kind of an aspect of a lot of these cases that you don't often remember that. Yeah, people have to review these things. I know the turnaround rate is like really, really fast for those jobs, but it's like you have to have someone who does this.
Yeah.
It is just like such a disgusting thing that we have to do. But how would we ever get around it in these cases,
It's such an important job.
Yeah.
It's got to be done. Jerry Richards may have had more evidence, but it's believed he destroyed much of it, which Wouldn't surprise me. Jerry Richards was prosecuted for child sex abuse materials and arrested for the same thing again in 1998.
They let him go.
Unbelievable. And then he ended up taking his life a decade later. Piece of shit. Millionaire Dyer Grossman was also involved in the operation, but fled to California and never paid for his crime. So if you're a millionaire, you are just able to escape these charges.
Didn't even flee the country.
Crimes. Yeah, just went to California.
Insane.
Unbelievable, man.
I know. It's so disgusting.
But Wayne County Detective Corey Williams, which I'd say I'm a fan of Corey Williams. I think he's cares about this case, has worked on this case for many, many years. He's retired now. But in any of the documentaries or really media coverage, more recent coverage around this case, Corey Williams most definitely will show up.
Yeah, and he seems like an honest voice in maybe a place where suspicions are raised. Totally. He definitely seems more honest than others.
Yeah. As honest as he can be. I mean, he's still a cop at the end of the day.
True.
So,
part of the system, yeah.
But he said this. He said, we were the first to look at P and P rings and being a motive in this case. We put quite a bit of time and effort into that. Were these kids filmed? Pictures taken? Were they passed around? We don't know at this point, but we did put a lot of time and effort into that. So it seems pretty self-explanatory that there was this likely all was going on. And of course, the people have come forward who went to North Fox Island.
Yeah.
Their stories confirm this flat out. So unfortunately, though, the investigation into North Fox Island did not lead to any charges in the Ock case, although many still believe the island and the killings must be connected in some way, shape, or form. So what is which, I don't know, I go back and forth. I'm like, could they be connected, or this was just a huge problem going on?
Yeah.
There were so many people who were taking part in child sex abuse materials.
Right. Like, Lord knows how many rings were operating.
Right.
At any given time in any state, really. I mean, these things are so underground, and clearly positions of power and people with a lot of money and connections are involved in something like this, which they have the resources to cover things up like this.
Right.
I mean, there is one connection that we're going to get into from North Fox Island to a suspect. And this next suspect that we're going to cover is, in my opinion, the strongest suspect. And I know the King family also felt the same way. But this is crazy once we get into this. This involved a man named Christopher Busch. And this was a man who was suspected to be involved in the Ock case. So this next section is a bit dense, but important.
Very important.
Yeah. The King family was actually responsible for bringing Christopher into the spotlight years after the original investigation. So let that simmer for a little bit. They also alleged that the county prosecutor, Jessica Cooper, failed to treat the lead seriously, and they treated the King family poorly throughout the investigation. Christopher was a predator connected to North Fox Island. A credible tip pointed investigators in his direction back in the 1970s during that initial investigation. Christopher lived alone for long periods of time, and during some of the murders, he lived with a friend named Gregory Green, a known child predator. Gregory had a list of criminal sexual conduct charges against him in the early 70s. One crime involved and strangling a boy he left outside an emergency room entrance, and the boy ended up living. Gregory served his time in a mental health hospital in California and was later released. Gregory's brother also told police that Gregory had built a secret room in his father's house in Flint, Michigan, and he once had a 14-year-old boy stay there, although it is unclear if anything happened to the boy while he was there, but I mean, you can only imagine. Both Gregory and Christopher Busch were known for luring young boys and assaulting them. Both actually became suspects in the Ock case. But police polygraphed them both, and they both passed. Allegedly.
Allegedly.
Yeah, we will get into that a bit later.
The fucking polygraphs in this case.
Stupid. You cannot trust polygraphs. This is the reason why we can't have them in a trial. And there are many ways you can physiologically throw off the test. They're not reliable.
Police were like, this is their main tool.
Yeah.
For vetting out suspects.
Right. Yeah. Dozens of
Crazy.
suspects they cleared through polygraph tests. So who knows how many just slipped by because of these stupid polygraph tests. But Gregory Green would have been capable of committing the first 3 murders in the Ock case, but he was in jail when Timothy King was killed. Gregory told police that Christopher Busch killed Mark Stebbins, and reportedly this was never followed up with more questioning because Christopher passed the polygraph test. Some suggest Gregory might have been the murderer, and when he thought he finally was caught, he then turned on his accomplice. Gregory Green later died in prison in 1995 while serving a life sentence for criminal sexual conduct. His cellmate, who was apparently also his lover, told a detective that Gregory possibly made a deathbed confession. He was crying and confessed to all the kids he molested. He then allegedly mentioned that he was involved in killing 4 children and got away with it. When the task force looked into 27-year-old Christopher Busch, they noticed he and his family had plenty of wealth, and that's, of course, going to play a big part in this. He was the son of a prominent General Motors executive, and if you know anything about Michigan, General Motors is one of the largest corporations that exist in Michigan, and especially Wayne and Oakland County. You have not only people who work for this company, but I mean, that is where their plants are. I lived in Hamtramck for a while. There, we still have a massive General Motors plant that takes up half the damn city. So this is big money. But Christopher Busch never served any jail time. He often had very powerful attorneys defend him, despite being accused of several crimes across Michigan. Police also noticed that some of his criminal records were either lost or destroyed, depending on the jurisdiction. Pretty convenient, right?
Yeah.
He had a series of child charges, child abuse material charges, and criminal sexual conduct charges against him. Keyword charges, convictions. Only a few weeks before Timothy King's murder, Flint police had arrested Christopher for a criminal sexual conduct charge with minors. They found rolls of film containing child abuse material on him, and reportedly, Christopher Busch's name was also on Francis Sheldon's client list, which connected him to North Fox Island. His charges never went to trial. Many, including a detective on the case, alleged that Christopher's parents paid off the victims so they would not testify. It's also believed that his victim was also groomed and manipulated by Christopher and Gregory to bring them more victims. Christopher and Gregory also allegedly showed another victim a photograph of what appeared to be Timothy King tied up in the back of Christopher's car.
These guys are fully capable of committing these 4 abduction / murders.
And like we were saying, you know, a lot of people thought it was just a single culprit, but that has changed significantly. A lot of people believe it was multiple culprits, because how could you possibly do something to this magnitude by yourself?
It'd be tough. It'd be tough, yeah.
To keep it quiet. As for the child abuse materials they found in Christopher's possession, Flint police negated the charge after questioning and polygraphing Christopher for the Ock crimes. Why? I don't know. Christopher had come from a very wealthy family, like we said. He was the black sheep, but his parents helped deal with his crimes through hiring expensive lawyers and paying people off. Even after he was arrested in Flint in January 1977 in a criminal sexual conduct case, and then polygraphed for the murder of Mark Stebbins, his bail was mysteriously reduced from $75,000 to only $1,000.
That doesn't just happen.
No,
that doesn't just happen because the judge is feeling nice.
Right, no.
No, that's connections there.
Mm-hmm. Connections and money for sure. In a damning statement to Detective Corey Williams, Christopher's own brother, Charles, and his wife said they never left their young son alone around Christopher. He was not even trusted within his own family.
That, I think, says everything you need to know about him.
That is, a damning character description.
This is a sick, dangerous individual.
Yeah. On November 20th, 1978, Christopher Busch died in his family home in Bloomfield Township. The case was ruled despite a report stating it was inconclusive whether Christopher had handled the shotgun that killed him. Some reports claimed there were bloody ropes found at the scene, but police later said that was misinformation. There were ropes, but they were not bloody. Many recall that the victims in the Ock case were bound with ropes, so connecting that and Christopher's room. It was also noted that his BAC was 0.41, which is incredibly high.
Yeah, that's super high.
Even Detective Corey Williams suggests that this would have made it very difficult for Christopher to even wield a shotgun. Many others, even in the police community, doubt that Christopher himself. He also did not leave a note, which is very uncommon. Either way, he was no longer a concern to the original task force in the 70s, and that task force disbanded only 25 days after Christopher's death. I don't think that's a coincidence. Many have pointed out that there were no more official Oakland County child killings after Christopher's death.
This is crazy. So, yeah, let's talk a little bit more about this scene, because a lot of people agree that this seems staged.
Sure.
That his was staged and he was actually murdered for several reasons. But this next piece of evidence found in his room is very chilling.
On the wall of Christopher's room, a drawing of a young boy screaming was recovered. Many believe the drawing is a depiction of Mark Stebbins. Mark's brother, Mike, if you remember him from the top of the episode, agreed that it looked like Mark in a state of pain. And if you're listening out there, it might be worth just looking up Mark Stebbins and then possibly looking up this depiction if you're interested. I mean, it does, bizarre to have this depiction in your room.
Just taped up on the wall, too.
Yeah. Beside nothing. It's not like he had a bunch of illustrations.
No.
It was just this.
The other thing I wanted to point out, too, about this scene, because there's redacted photos out there from multiple angles. So for one, Christopher Busch is in bed under the covers.
Mm-hmm.
He's covered up by like his comforter or blanket under the bed. There's the shotgun's kind of lying next to him on the bed. And then what's very strange about it is the wound itself is between his eyes. And it's very strange based on how, if he were to unalive himself with this weapon, it's very strange that he would have ended up in this position underneath the covers, because he would have had to be up kneeling on the bed to kneel onto the barrel of the gun in order to actually shoot himself in this way.
Yeah.
So that the wound itself doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because typically if people use a shotgun to do this, it's underneath the chin or in the mouth. And not only that, there's not a whole lot of blood found in this scene. There's a few like smears of blood on the bed, but there's not as much blood as you would expect in this type of scene found in his room. It looks relatively clean, and I think Corey or maybe somebody else was saying that it looked like somebody had gone through the house potentially in the room and kind of, strewn things everywhere and kind of went through all the stuff, and then potentially even brought out the ligatures and stuff and like placed them there to make it basically look like a scene of that's so glaringly obvious that this is the guy, this is the Oakland County child killer, that police can't refuse this.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I also had a thought.
Refute it.
It's like, if he was murdered, did someone plant the ropes there? Or is this someone who was disgruntled and knew this guy was up to something? Is this someone who was possibly trying to cover up because they thought Christopher was going to reveal some sort of information because he was being investigated? Like, there's a lot of angles you can pull from it. But I think there is a resounding agreement now in hindsight that he didn't kill himself and that he was murdered. Wow.
And this shouldn't have been the end of the investigation into Christopher Busch.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
The fact that the task force is like, all right, there we go. We got all the things in here that tell us that he's the guy. So might as well stop. Let's not even consider the fact that he may have been murdered, and that could lead us to who else is involved in these child killings or in this ring we've been investigating. Like, they're just like, that's it.
Let's close it up.
Unbelievable.
Circling back for a second to that sketch, Paul Walton, the chief assistant prosecutor for Oakland County, said that the sketch is not of one person and is a combination of various suspect descriptors. So take that as you will.
So it's like kind of where it ended.
Yeah.
Because after he died, it just went cold for a long time, just like no movement, nothing really going on until 2005, when Michigan State Police revitalized the investigation, and Detective Corey Williams, who we've been talking about, contributed a persistent effort in the case. And since Timothy King's body had been found in Wayne County and not Oakland County, Detective Corey Williams could pursue leads differently than the jurisdiction over there.
Right. Because if you remember, he was abducted in Oakland County, but actually, no, what was it? It was Franklin, I believe, is where he was found, which is, it was not Oakland County. So that was the only case that wasn't really connected to Oakland County specifically. And I find out, isn't that good in this case, but also disturbing that those jurisdictions lines can affect so much?
Yeah. Especially back then, it was like crazy.
Yeah.
Like, oh, cross the line, nothing else we can do.
Yeah, it's not our problem anymore.
They'll figure it out, hopefully.
Right.
Yeah, crazy. But according to Timothy King's sister, Kathy, Detective Corey Williams reviewed Christopher and Gregory's polygraph results from 1977, and he showed them to several polygraphers at his police station. And according to Kathy, they determined that both men should not have passed their polygraph tests. Allegedly, one of the anonymous original polygraphers later admitted that Christopher had admitted to killing Timothy King during his polygraph test.
What?
Which is like, how did they not know about this?
Come on.
At the time.
Yeah.
Unreal.
Yeah.
And while researching the case, Kathy later came across John Hastings, another suspect in the original investigation. She discovered that he had lived only a few blocks away from Mr. Christopher Busch. John Hastings could have also been an accomplice. A woman named Helen Dagner also claimed that John confessed to her about his involvement in the abductions and the murders in the Oakland County child killings.
I mean, that is not a coincidence,
No.
man. That is a direct connection. You live around the block from this guy? Come on.
But police had already questioned John and performed a polygraph test on him, which he passed in the original investigation. So just because he passed, they're like, well, he's telling the truth. He must not have been involved.
It's ridiculous.
So they just stopped looking into him. But Helen Dagner continued to believe that John was a killer. Unfortunately, there was not a match between John Hastings' DNA and hair samples to any of the 4 victims. The same went for Christopher Busch, although the DNA was taken from a cheek swab of his brother Charles, since Christopher was already dead by the time that the DNA tests were implemented. In 2012, police said that there was zero evidence suggesting Christopher Busch was the killer, but Timothy King's family was convinced that Christopher was the culprit. Investigators never informed any of the victims' families that Christopher and Gregory were major suspects in the case, and they had to find out by just doing their own research. And on top of this, they found out Christopher Busch had been arrested and then released before Timothy King was abducted and murdered. So some suggest that investigators realized their mistake in letting him go, and that, oh my God, we let him go and he went and killed another kid.
Right.
And they tried to cover it up instead of coming clean about, oh, we fucked up. This guy was dangerous. I don't know why on earth we let him out.
Right. And I don't know how deep that lie can run, but
yeah, right.
Possibly very deep.
Very deep.
Yeah.
Who knows? Yeah, that's what's crazy about this case. It could run up to levels that we can't even imagine.
Yeah.
Could be the governor's office for all we know.
Right. Yeah. And like Corey Williams, he's saying like, of course we want to solve this case. So there are voices within the police force that are saying like, we have no reason to, be complicit in a cover up. They don't say that, but a lot of them are like, trust us, we are trying, but it's hard when you come across these facts and it's almost just so easy to be like, this screams of a cover up, right?
It's hard not to think that. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Especially with Christopher Busch because of who he is and who his family is. And the fact that he is a dangerous predator that just gets off.
Mm-hmm.
And yet there's these unsolved child killings going on. And it's like, we're not putting 2 and 2 together. And amongst all the other evidence that aligns him with it, it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. I mean, I do get the frustration of being like, that we don't have physical evidence to connect this guy. But even then, I mean, this guy, since considering all the charges he had against him, and then his bail was down to like $1,000, I see even then, like if this guy was responsible, we already can see from his past that he doesn't suffer the consequences of his actions, right? So knowing that, and then what comes later, would this guy even in In an ideal world, sure. But knowing all that stuff that he did and was never really going to pay for it, it's almost like, God, of course this ended where he essentially got away with it. I mean, he still died, but maybe someone who had pulled the trigger realized that and saw that the end was that, like, it was in their hands because the police weren't going to really do anything at the end of the day.
That's what my biggest frustration is why didn't they do anything? Why didn't they even try?
Yeah.
Why not try to get him on this? Why did you guys not even, like, I get the polygraph thing, but you guys really stopped at the polygraph? You didn't even bother to follow this guy home, surveil him, do any sort of investigating to see what this guy is up to, who he's connected to, who he's talking to. Like, there's no investigation, and maybe there's evidence of that somewhere in a file somewhere, but it's just crazy to me to think that they did nothing.
Yeah. I mean, the investigation, from what I was reading, was fairly intensive with Christopher Busch. But then again, it's like all of that information had to be uncovered by the King family too. So they weren't even really transparent about that. And why? Why were they not transparent about this? I feel like if you have someone like this, you could at least tell the family, like, look, there is a suspect. I mean, a lot of things align here. We currently cannot connect him with physical evidence, but we are doing our best. It wasn't even like that. It was just no mention of Christopher Busch, and they had to kind of peel the layers back on it.
Well, especially when years and years and years go by and you still have nothing, and that you have to find out all this on your own. But to date, none of the hairs found on Kristine and Tim's bodies matched the DNA of Charles Busch, Christopher's brother. The dog hairs found on the boys have yet to be tested because there's no dog hair to compare it with, and Charles Busch did not have a sample of hair from the family's Scottish Terrier that they owned in the 1970s. Gregory Green's family also did not have a sample of hair from their dog. And to this day, many argue whether Christopher was capable of the abductions and murders himself. Many suggest he was possibly one of several perpetrators. Because it sounds like Christopher was, a lot of people are like, who knew him, are like, I don't know if he's like capable or smart enough or cunning enough to pull off abductions and not be seen and get away with it.
Right. I think he was
kind of a dummy. Yeah. So they're like kind of doubt that if he was involved, he had help.
Wasn't alone. Yeah.
And then in 2011, another theory surrounded the case, but this one also went nowhere. But back in 1977, at the time of the murders, a 16-year-old boy named James Vincent Gunnels, who went by Vincent, was by the suspect Christopher Busch. The theory is that Vincent was used to lure OCCK or OCK victims because Christopher and Gregory had used Vincent to lure other victims as well. A hair found on Kristine's body was matched to Vincent Gunnels through mitochondrial DNA. Mitochondrial DNA testing cannot isolate a specific person as a suspect. It tests only along the maternal line. For example, two maternally related brothers and their mother would all have the same mitochondrial DNA profile. And because of the quality of the hair, an exact DNA match could not be made. In 2009, Vincent was questioned by investigators a number of times in prison. He was polygraphed a second time because the first was inconclusive, and this time he failed the polygraph, but he denied any knowledge of or involvement in the Oakland County child murder case. There was no other evidence there to connect Vincent, and he was never charged with a crime related to the case. But in 2012, Vincent Gunnels told the public that he had nothing to do with the child killings. So, again, just lots of questions remain here.
Yeah. But it is kind of frustrating where in the later polygraph test, he fails the second one, but it just goes to show it's like if you were to fail it or pass it, there's no difference because polygraphs don't matter.
No, and you can literally throw them.
Yeah.
By just moving or, there's lots of ways to have your results show inconclusive.
Right.
But also, it's also up to, and especially back in the 70s, it was all up to the person administering the test.
True, yeah.
And their analysis of the data that they're seeing.
That's
and
very
nowadays they have software with algorithms and things like that that are probably more accurate, at least in reading the data they're getting. But back then it was just like whoever's behind the little
however that
device
needle jumps.
Yeah. They're determining whether or not they think it's deceptive or not.
Right.
So it could be so inconsistent.
By the end of the 1970s, the original task force was disbanded and only one detective was left on the case. And this is important to mention just because they thought they maybe had a guy, because in 1999, Oakland County police officers traveled to Wyoming to exhume the body of a man named David Norberg. David was a former Michigan resident and a potential suspect because of his criminal history as a child and violent alcoholic. He had died in a car crash in 1981, and among his belongings after his death was a necklace with Kristine engraved on it. His wife gave it to police thinking the name could have been Kristine Mihelich. Police considered that the unidentified human hairs that had been recovered from the victims' bodies when they were found might have belonged to David Norberg. Here is the news report from 1999 that covered the investigators exhuming the body in Wyoming.
Investigators traveled 1,200 miles to Recluse, Wyoming, to exhume Norberg's body in a long-shot attempt to match his DNA to a hair found on one of the 4 victims.
It might very well not be the right guy, but he's a suspect. We have DNA, and you just have to come out and do this. How can you just not do it? How do you ignore it?
As the workers dig, investigators stand guard. They know that this may be their best and final chance to solve the case of the Oakland County child killer. From this Wyoming graveyard, the evidence goes to a Michigan crime lab for extensive testing.
Well, the success of this operation will be measured by the ability of the appropriate labs to do the testing and hopefully the matching.
Brooks Patterson was the prosecuting attorney at the time of the killings. He says closure would mean everything to the families of the young victims.
We exhumed the body of a suspect and cut off some of his skin and so forth, and then compared the two, and it didn't match, but that's how far we went.
So yeah, there was no DNA match, so David Norberg was dropped as a suspect. But I think it's important to show things like that because it also puts into perspective the time and like how many times the families had to watch like another news report of like a potential suspect and then being let down at the end of the day.
Yeah, just when they think they're getting close to the end of this miserable journey, they are left with nothing yet again, back to square one.
Yep. And when the case was then reopened later in 2005, Captain Robert Robertson's son, Detective Sergeant David Robertson, led the task force with Detective Sergeant Gary Gray. They began re-examining all of the physical evidence from 1976 and 1977, and they did kind of uncover some interesting stuff because back in the 70s, a sex abuse material ring had not only been discovered on North Fox Island, but also in Detroit's Cass Corridor as well. Cass Corridor, I mean, it was known as a really nice section of the city. And then in the 70s and 80s, it was known as a terrifying, really grungy area of the city. And now it's kind of recovered and it's back to not what it once was, but on the up and up. But it was during those decades where this was seen as just like an incredibly dangerous place to be. A lot of drugs, a lot of sexual abuse happening here. But at the time, in the 70s, investigators found nothing that connected the ring to the OCCK case, but the proximity of the ring to the killings, which was only a few miles outside of Oakland County, suggested that these communities of predators were very close to the location of the abductions, just up Woodward. Richard Lawson, a predator with a long criminal past, gave detectives a new tip that reignited the investigation in 2005. Richard had actually killed his boss in 1989 and then fled Michigan for 15 years. Detective Corey Williams solved the case in 2005. Richard then gave police information in hopes of reducing his sentence. He told them about a man named Theodore Lamborgine, who went by Ted Orr, O-R-R, in Detroit. Richard claimed that he had once seen a picture of Timothy King in Ted's apartment in Detroit's Cass Corridor back in the 70s. He also convinced that he and Ted would lure young boys to his apartment with drugs, food, and money. Then they would assault them and take pictures of them. The ring included 3 other men as well, but they had died by the time the case was reopened. Ted Lamborgine was an auto worker who lived in Detroit during the time of the murders, although by 2005 he lived in Ohio after moving from Detroit in 1978, less than a year after Timothy King's murder, so the last official murder connected to the case. Ted was obsessed with cleanliness and a born-again Christian who was fanatic about his faith. He would even hand out religious pamphlets during his retirement years. It was also discovered that Ted would clean his victims in a tub afterwards, which, if you remember from the original victims in this case, it was the potential killer was called the babysitter because they were cleaned and well-fed and groomed before they were being murdered. And to add to that, sometimes he would smother but not kill his victims. But the smothering, as we know, killed many of the original victims. In the 70s, he was caught paying young boys so he could assault them in Detroit. And soon after, he made the request to transfer his work to Cleveland. Ted became the strongest suspect the OCCK case ever came across, and authorities arrested him in Ohio in 2005. They charged him with a slew of criminal sexual charges for his crimes in Detroit, but he denied any responsibility in the OCCK case. Wayne County prosecutor Kim Worthy released his photo and criminal history to the press, hoping he would confess. Fun little fact, I used to work at a guitar shop in Ferndale on Woodward and 9 Mile called Professional Guitars, and Kim Worthy's daughter actually took lessons there. I met her once.
Oh, really?
Yeah. She was a huge name in Wayne County. But if Ted did confess, prosecutors promised to arrange a new identity for him in a lighter security prison, considering that child predators are often the most despised inmates in prison. So they tried to sweeten this deal to get this confession, but Ted still did not confess, and he was later convicted of 12 counts of criminal sexual conduct with persons under the age of 15. Fortunately, none of these had to do with the OCCK case, so nothing there. Rather than accept a plea bargain that would have required him to take a polygraph test on the Oakland County killings, he pled guilty to the charges against him, and he also rejected an offer of a reduced sentence in exchange for a polygraph. Many took his silence and refusal to be polygraphed as admission to the killings, but, others were unconvinced. Either way, Ted is currently serving life in prison in Oaks Correctional Facility, and many point out that he was afforded 40 years of freedom when he should have been behind bars for his crimes. The family of Mark Stebbins filed a lawsuit against Ted in 2007 for $25,000. The family was not seeking monetary damages. They said they were only filing the lawsuit to help the investigation and get everyone responsible in jail. As for Ted's friend Richard Lawson, he was also convicted of 5 counts of criminal sexual conduct with persons under the age of 13 and 1 count of murder. He is serving a life sentence and has denied any connection to the OCCK case.
It's just crazy to find out how many child predators are running around during this time period.
Yeah.
I mean, which just complicates everything tenfold.
Yeah.
There's so many people involved in this just horrific shit going on.
Absolute monsters out here.
So, because it's like, it's interesting that Ted didn't just do that, just confess, just to make his situation better.
Yeah.
And maybe that's something to do with his faith now or whatever. Maybe he's like,
possibly.
I'm not going to confess to something that I didn't do just to better my situation. That's like something religious is just kind of what I was thinking for why he didn't do that. But I think I see why they thought he could definitely be the one. I mean, he's got a lot of things that seem to connect there, but yeah, it's crazy. Then in 2010, a man with the alias Jeff Gannon, or sometimes Bob, told police that he had an acquaintance back in 1977 that he sometimes took to satanic rituals, which added to the satanic rumors because, of course, those were going around. Some also suggested that a witch coven was involved. Jeff claimed this acquaintance was the Oakland County child killer, and according to Jeff, his acquaintance had approximately 11 to 16 victims. Jeff was interviewed by police, and prosecutor Jessica Cooper later described the interview as a rambling statement outlining a theory that the Oakland County child killer abductions and murders were related to pagan holidays, the lunar calendar, and Wiccan rituals. Nice of him to just throw all that out there. Jeff asked the investigators if he could get information about their persons of interest. He also wanted to see the letter that had been mailed to Dr. Danto back in 1977 so that he could be sure he had the right man before he gave them a name. His requests were denied, luckily. But despite this, he continued to involve himself in the case. He would speak with Deborah Jarvis, mother of victim Kristine Mihelich, and investigative journalists. He claimed he was an investigator with a team that spent 10,000 hours on the case, and when asked to show his findings, he admitted that he didn't want to because he doubted the competence of the Oakland County officers. Kristine's mother, Deborah Jarvis, believed that Jeff knew who the murderer was at one point. She and her lawyer, Paul Hughes, also filed a $100 million lawsuit in 2012 against prosecutors and investigators, alleging the case had been mishandled. The family said that the case was handled so poorly that they felt that as far as identifying her killer, all hope was lost. Kristine's mother, Deborah, said this: "The system has not only failed Kristine, but has failed all the victims of the monster that took our kids." True.
Yeah.
The family attorney, Paul Hughes, said this: "We're also asking that the case be taken away from Oakland County, be taken away from Michigan State Police because of what we feel is either gross mismanagement or a cover-up." Oakland County Sheriff Michael Bouchard responded saying that he would do everything he could to help the family solve the murder, and the lawsuit was later dismissed. Attorney Paul Hughes later offered a copy of Jeff's investigation report for a donation of $1,500. The families of the victims, as well as prosecutor Jessica Cooper, claimed that Paul Hughes and Jeff Gannon were attempting to profit from the victims' families' distress.
Yeah, that attorney kind of seems like a scumbag.
Yeah. Donation of $1,500.
Yeah, come on, get out of here.
I mean, everybody's just pissed.
Yeah.
Everybody's just mad, and they should, rightfully so.
Yeah, I get it. In 2012, investigators said they were the closest they had ever been in solving the case. Seems like maybe they said that a lot. Their new person of interest was a 70-year-old Archibald Edward Sloan, who went by Ed or Arch. He was investigated early on after Mark Stebbins was murdered because he had a charge in a different state. Arch fit the general profile of the killer and had access to many vehicles since he was a tow truck driver. He was known to use an isolated trailer in the abandoned Packard plant in Detroit to sexually assault children. Here is a 2012 news report with DA Jessica Cooper regarding Arch Sloan.
Well, that's right. This is a new person of interest. Prosecutors just passed out his picture, and they said they need your help. The Oakland County prosecutor is asking if you remember anything about this man, Arch Sloan. Sloan is now 70 years old and serving a life sentence in Michigan for criminal sexual conduct. Prosecutor Jessica Cooper announced today that evidence found in Sloan's 1966 Pontiac Bonneville matches hairs that were found on two of the Oakland County child killer victims. Sloan is being called a person of interest in the case. Between 1976 and 1977, a killer abducted and murdered 4 children in Oakland County. After the first murder, detectives were tipped off to Sloan and they searched his Bonneville.
The investigators took tapings from the interior of the car, and on those tapings were small hairs, fibers, and fur.
Hairs found on the 2 male victims, Timothy King and Mark Stebbins, were analyzed by the FBI's lab in Quantico, and they have the same mitochondrial DNA profile as a hair that was recovered from Sloan's Bonneville.
That testing, however, revealed that the hairs do not come from the driver of that vehicle. The driver of that vehicle is not the donor of either the hair found in the Bonneville or the hairs found on the boys.
Sloan would have been 34 at the time of the first murder. The child killer task force has crossed the country and the state to figure out who the hairs belong to and to determine their connection to Sloan. Cooper says Sloan was also known to drive a 1969 black Chevy pickup and a 1971 blue Ford pickup. If anyone recognizes Sloan or the vehicles, the task force wants to hear from you.
DNA evidence that was found on 2 of the bodies connected to 2 victims. The first victim, Mark Stebbins, and the 4th victim, Timothy King. Similar hairs were found on the boys and inside a car that belonged to Arch Sloan. And this was inside a 1966 Pontiac Bonneville. As we mentioned a bit earlier, mitochondrial DNA testing cannot isolate a specific person as a suspect. It tests only along the maternal line, and it's about a 1 in 2,000 match. The hairs did not match Arch's hair, but it came to light that he did fail polygraph tests about the child killings in 2010 and 2012. We know not to trust that, but he might have had a passenger in his car or possibly known someone and lent them the vehicle, which was possibly used in the crimes. Arch Sloan did not confess to anything regarding the murders, and unfortunately, police couldn't find any physical evidence to tie him to the murder. In 1985, he was sentenced to life in prison for 2 criminal sexual conduct charges. He is serving life in prison without parole at Gus Harrison Correctional Facility, and he's currently 83 years old. But when pressed about the hair in his car, he said he didn't even own the car at the time. And he said it actually belonged to the son of a state police lieutenant. All right. DNA found on Kristine's jacket ended up being a maternal DNA match to this unnamed police family. When the family member's DNA was tested, unfortunately, it did not match the DNA from saliva found on Kristine, which there's a lot of back and forth about that saliva DNA, if that's even a thing. There might be a lot of misinformation about that out there, but the most recent task force claimed that this information from the previous task force under Robertson is inaccurate, and that DNA evidence was not actually found on Kristine's jacket. The car being owned by the son of a state police lieutenant and the conflicting information between investigations make many people believe a police cover-up is at play. But Detective Corey Williams believes this is all just an urban legend and that the investigation is very complex. To add to this kind of police conspiracy theory, according to an anonymous eyewitness when he was a kid, he saw Kristine actually get into a civilian car with a man in a police officer's uniform. The eyewitness also claimed that police officers harassed him at school 3 months after he had called the tip line. They told him that his family was going to be split up and his mother was going to jail if he didn't stay quiet. The clerk at 7-Eleven, though, who saw Kristine that day, said they never saw a police officer at the store. The rumor mill to this day suggests that a police officer was somehow involved in this case. I mean, if you go down the rabbit holes, police cover-up is a big one here.
Yeah. Because, I mean, it all comes back to how did they lure these kids?
Right.
And so a lot of people theorize that it must have been somebody in a police uniform, firefighter uniform, something that a child would trust, and then told them to get into a vehicle with them or something along those lines, but maybe not.
It could have just been someone dressed and impersonating a police officer.
Totally.
You know?
I mean, these are pretty young kids, so it could definitely fool them, especially if they're driving a civilian car and they're just wearing a costume or something. You never know. But yeah, the rumor mill is wild. I mean, especially getting into this next name that got thrown out there.
Oh, yeah.
Because of course it did. But some have also connected infamous serial killer John Wayne Gacy to the case, since he was reportedly in Michigan around the time of the killings, but he was later cleared through DNA testing. Because of course.
Yeah.
A book about the murders, The Snow Killings, published in 2020, is about a Wayne County detective and that prosecutor's role in the case. The book alleged that Oakland County obstructed the case for years, and when asked if this was true, Paul Walton, chief assistant prosecutor for Oakland County, said this: "No, in fact, this office went through and did a complete review of all the forensic evidence. I understand that wasn't done before." He also said that misinformation and assumptions have hindered the case. Walton has also emphasized that it is not clear if all the victims were abducted and killed by the same person, and many believe the killings were opportunistic team killings. Of the major suspects, Gregory Green, Christopher Busch, Ted Lamborgine, Arch Sloan, and Vincent Gunnels, 4 of the 5 are convicted. Everyone except for Vincent. It's clear that many suspects were involved in the seedy underground communities that existed, because again, it was before the internet.
Yeah.
And so they had these ultra secret underground ways of meeting and communicating with one another. And Detective Corey Williams suggests that these communities had hierarchies similar to organized crime even. Many, including prosecutors and victims' families, hope that advances in DNA technology and recovery of more nuclear DNA from the existing evidence might provide more clues. In 2020, Walton said, "I wish we could turn around and say tomorrow that we think forensically we can point to one individual or someone's made admissions. I am very empathetic towards Mr. King. I wish we could come to him and say we have identified who abducted and killed your child. That has always been our goal, but to go to him and say, I think, maybe, could be, I don't know that advances anything for him." I was also listening to another interview with Detective Corey Williams, and he was talking about how there's advances in DNA technology that hopefully soon will be able to take mitochondrial DNA samples and actually turn it into a nuclear DNA sample somehow, which would be crazy.
Awesome, yeah.
Which would be really helpful. Following his son's death, Barry King and his family spent years pursuing the case, because how could you not? In an attempt to discover the identity of the killer, the King family released a 6-hour movie called Decades of Deceit, which collected everything they knew about the case, and they were convinced that Christopher Busch murdered Timothy. Timothy's mother, Marion, passed away in 2004, and his father, Barry, passed away in 2020, never knowing who was responsible for their son's abduction. In the years before his death, Barry expressed that his family was not confident that the investigators would solve the Oakland County child killings. Mark's brother, Michael Stebbins, said in 2021, "I would hope that if anybody out there has information in the case, that they would please put it forward, because it's been a very long 45 years for me with no answers at all." And Michael passed away not long after this interview in 2021.
Me and my brother fishing.
Michael Stebbins reliving happy memories of his childhood with his younger brother, Mark.
Life was good. My brother and I, we got along great.
But that all ended when 12-year-old Mark Stebbins disappeared in February of 1976. He was playing pool with his brother at the American Legion Hall in Ferndale and decided to go home early to watch a movie, but he never made it.
Everything went south from there.
His body found days later in a snowbank. Mark Stebbins was the first of 4 young victims murdered by the Oakland County child killer in 1976 and 1977. Although there have been possible suspects over the years, the murders remain unsolved.
It tore my life apart for a long time. It did. It really did.
And as the decades pass, Stebbins still wonders.
What would happen if I would have left the American Legion at the same time as my brother? Could I have saved him?
If you remember from that previous interview, he said this similar thing, and I wonder like how long that question remained in his mind, probably for the rest of his life, you know?
Yeah, it's how do you even deal with that? It's just unbelievable. Because to this day, no one has been arrested and no one has been charged for the murders in the Oakland County child murders. Michigan State Police confirmed the investigation is still open and all new tips are investigated as they come in. Some argue that the investigation is only technically open, so police have an excuse to avoid speaking about, you know, what's going on, what they missed, take criticism, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
open themselves up for liability,
Yeah,
right?
we can't talk about an ongoing investigation. I thought this was an insight. I've never really come across an insight like this, but that's how much distrust has been built here. That's how much suspicion has been built that people think, oh, you know what, this, instead of thinking it as a positive thing, like, oh, good, they're still investigating this. People are so in distrust toward the police that they're only keeping it open so they don't have to talk about it. That's how.
Yeah. How do you fix that too?
Yeah.
If you're the police, there's no fixing that.
No.
I mean, that's the result of 40 plus years of nothing.
Right.
So I don't blame people one bit. I mean, this thing was majorly botched.
Yeah.
And you know, who knows why? And it's still everybody's question. Because I mean, it's like, if it ever came out that somebody within the department or law enforcement
could you imagine
was involved,
yeah,
this would tear down this whole city.
Right. Absolutely. This whole county.
The whole county's
Yeah.
going. Yeah. Like
and that's,
you were covering this up. It would,
right. And that's why a lot of people think this is just continue to be cover up, because the other option there is mayhem, basically.
Well, I know there's like one clip of fucking Cooper lady.
Oh yeah.
And she's like, to think that people actually believe that someone in law enforcement would have done something to these children and covered it up, or that we would cover it up, is just unbelievable. Blah, blah, blah.
Is it unbelievable?
But it's not, dude.
Yeah.
There's actual examples of this happening in history.
Right.
In other places.
Right.
So why is that suddenly out of the question that, oh, we couldn't have done it?
Right.
There's no way.
And there was the mitochondrial DNA match to a
Yes!
police officer's family member. So
Right.
it's like, okay, it's not totally crazy.
It's not. And I know they don't like to look at themselves in that way or like consider that possibility. But I think in this case, it's absolutely a possibility that it was somebody involved in law enforcement, and whether or not they were the actual killer, the one that murdered these kids, or they were involved in some way or knew of it, was accomplice in some way, doesn't make it any better.
Yeah.
And it was, who knows?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, people don't want to think conspiratorial about things, but sometimes I'm like, it's hard not to.
Yeah.
When there's just nothing. And then it comes to find out after the families have gone through and done their own research that things have been withheld. There's all this information that they didn't even know about. The police didn't share with them over the decades that this was an open case. It was crazy.
Yeah.
Even after the information pertaining to the individual is dead.
Right.
It's like, then what are we doing here?
Yeah.
It's insane. It seems like also for a case like this, there was not as much involvement with the general public as you'd see in other cases where they're like trying to get the public to get involved and collaborating, and, doing news conferences and stuff. And I know they did some of that, but, it feels like it wasn't enough. And then they were very quick to be like, Busch was the guy, but without being like Busch is the guy, you know what I mean?
Right.
Officially.
Right.
Because they can't officially charge him.
Yeah.
So I don't know, man. This case is such a mess and such a disappointment that the so many family members of these children have since passed and had no answers whatsoever. And the ones that remain still have no answers.
Mm-hmm.
It's just tragic. But one of the things, this case really hit home for both of us. I mean, literally for Austin, being from this area, but also, just anytime we cover cases involving children, it's just, it hits home on a whole other level. And
yeah.
So I wanted to figure out a way to help this community in some way. And through the Higher Hope Foundation, we actually got connected with the Care House of Oakland County, which is the Children's Advocacy Center responsible for serving Oakland County, Michigan, and metropolitan Detroit. And this is a really, really great nonprofit that offers child victims of physical and sexual abuse a safe and welcoming place in which to be interviewed for child abuse investigations rather than at a police station.
Yeah.
So there's a place where they have special rooms to make kids comfortable and so it's not any scarier than things have already been for them. And this care house is doing wonderful work. They offer free trauma-focused therapy for children who've experienced abuse and for their non-offending caregivers as well as advocacy for children in foster care, another thing that's super important, and really just community education and prevention around child abuse. So we actually got connected with them, and we are in the process of issuing them a grant to help with their programs over there, which is awesome to be making a difference. And again, that's thanks to everybody that listens to the shows. The shows and Mile Higher Media as a whole are big financial contributors to the Higher Hope Foundation. So we appreciate everybody listening and watching all the shows, but also for those that have donated to the Higher Hope Foundation, that's higherhope.org. If you're interested in donating, and you can help us do more work like this in the future. So thank you to all of you guys out there who do support us and support the foundation. We really appreciate it, and it's making a real world difference. Because sometimes I know for me, I walk away from some of these things and I'm just like so discouraged. I'm like, society's so fucked up, and the systems that are in place to protect us and to provide justice for us just are failing. And it's like, what do we do?
Yeah.
And that's why these nonprofits and nonprofits in general are so important, as they're helping patch the holes and fill in the gaps where our systems are failing us. But we're going to go ahead and wrap up today's episode there. As always, our hearts go out to the victims and their families in this case, and just can't even begin to comprehend the pain and anguish they've been through this entire time. Is just something else. But we will go ahead and see you guys next week with another one. Until then, lights out, everybody.